Welcome back to iBosch USA Certificate in Permit Work Part 6. Now let's discuss confined space entry permit. We know what is confined space. Confined space is a place which is not designed for permanent occupancy, may have limited access, poor ventilation, or hazardous atmosphere. Such area is known as confined space. Confined space entry permits are necessary for entering confined spaces such as tanks, vessels, tunnels, or pits. Confined space entry permits are necessary to enter wherever there is a limited access, poor ventilation, or hazardous atmospheres. Confined space entry permit would ensure that proper safety measures are in place to protect workers from hazards such as asphyxiation, toxic gases, engulfment, or physical hazards. Now let's understand the hazards and controls of confined space entry. Confined space entry presents significant hazards due to limited access, poor ventilation, and potential exposure to hazardous atmosphere, engulfment, or entrapment. Now let's understand the hazards and controls associated with the confined space in detail. The first and foremost hazard is atmospheric hazards due to oxygen deficiency, due to presence of flammable gases, due to presence of vapors, dangerous vapors, or toxic substances present in the confined space atmosphere can result in asphyxiation, fire, explosion, or chemical exposure. In order to protect people from atmospheric hazards, conduct atmospheric testing or gas testing using calibrated gas detectors to evaluate oxygen level, flammable gas, and toxic substances before entry. Make sure that oxygen level is between 19.5 to 23.5 percentage. If the oxygen percentage is below 19.5, this is known as oxygen depletion stage. And if the oxygen percentage is above 23 percentage, that is to be considered as oxygen enrichment stage. So, conduct an atmospheric testing using calibrated gas detectors to evaluate oxygen level, flammable gases, and toxic substances before entry. Ventilate the confined space to remove hazardous atmosphere and ensure adequate oxygen supply. Use appropriate RPE respiratory protective equipment such as supplied air respirators or self-contained breathing apparatus CABA when atmospheric hazards cannot be adequately controlled. The second hazard associated with the confined space is engulfment and entrapment hazards. See, workers can be engulfed by loose materials such as grains, sands, or become trapped by moving machinery or collapsing structure within the confined space. In order to protect workers from engulfment and entrapment hazard, implement lockout and tagout procedure to de-energize and isolate machinery or equipment that poses entrapment hazards. Secure or barricade opening to prevent accidental entry or unauthorized access to confined spaces. In addition to this, provide confined space entry permit and conduct thorough risk assessment to identify and control engulfment and entrapment hazards. The next hazard is physical hazards. There is a possibility of slip, trip, and fall due to uneven surfaces, obstructions, or limited visibility within the confined space. This can result in injuries. In order to protect people from these physical hazards, use appropriate fall protection equipment PFAS such as full body safety harness, lanyard, or guardrail when working at height or near unprotected edges. Ensure adequate lightings and visibility within the confined space to identify hazards and navigate safely. Implement safe work procedures such as securing tools and equipment to prevent trip hazard and minimize the risk of accident. Another hazard associated with the confined space is temperature extremes. See, hot or cold within the confined space can lead to heat stress, hypothermia, or thermal burns. In order to protect people from temperature extremes, monitor and control temperature and humidity level within the confined space to maintain a comfortable and safe working environment. Provide appropriate personal protective equipment such as heat resistant clothing or thermal insulation for workers exposed to temperature extremes. Implement work or rest schedules, hydration breaks, and shaded rest area to prevent heat related illness during hot conditions. The next hazard associated with the confined space is communication and rescue hazard. Communication difficulties and delay in rescue operation can occur due to limited access. Confined space configuration is such it would be very difficult to bring people outside, or lack of emergency response procedures also can increase communication rescue hazards. In order to protect people from communication rescue hazards, establish effective communication systems such as two-way radios, signals, or visual aids to maintain contact with the workers inside the confined space and monitor their safety. Develop and implement confined space rescue plan, including trained rescue personnel, equipment, and procedures for timely response to emergencies. Conduct regular drills and training exercise to simulate confined space rescue scenarios and ensure that workers are familiar with emergency procedures. By implementing these hazard controls and following established safe work practices and procedures, organization can effectively mitigate the risk associated with the confined space entry and ensure the safety of workers involved in such activities. The next is electrical work permits. Electrical work permits are required for activities involving electrical installations, repairs, maintenance, or modifications. Electrical work permits ensure that electrical work is performed safely to prevent electric shock, arc flash incidents, and other electrical hazards. Now let's discuss hazards and controls associated with electrical work. Electrical work poses various hazards that can lead to electric shock, electrocution, burns, fires, and explosion if not properly managed. Now let's see the hazards and controls associated with the electrical work in detail. The first hazard is electric shock and electrocution. Contact with the live electrical part or energized equipment can result in electric shock, which may cause muscle spasms, cardiac arrest, or death. In order to protect people from electric shock or electrocution, de-energize electrical circuit or equipment before performing maintenance, repairs, or modification. Use lockout and tagout procedure to isolate energy source and prevent accidental re-energization. Verify the absence of voltage using a voltage tester or other appropriate testing device before touching electrical conductors or equipment. Personnel must wear appropriate personal protective equipment such as insulated gloves, sleeves, and footwear when working on or near energized equipment. The next hazard is arc flash and arc blast. This arc flash and arc blast even can occur during electrical faults or equipment failures, releasing intense heat, light, and pressure that can cause severe burns, injuries, or fatalities. In order to avoid arc flash and arc blast, conduct arc flash hazard assessment to determine the potential energy level and boundaries of arc flash hazards. Label electrical equipment with appropriate arc flash warning labels indicating the incident energy and required personal protective equipment. Establish restricted approach boundaries and safe work distance to protect workers from arc flash and blast hazards. Provide arc rated clothing, face shield, and other personal protective equipment based on the arc flash hazard analysis and incident energy levels. The third hazard associated with electrical work is fire and explosion hazards. You know, overloaded circuits, short circuits, or faulty electrical equipment can ignite flammable materials leading to fires or explosion. In order to avoid fire and explosion hazards, ensure that electrical systems and equipment are properly designed, installed, and maintained to prevent overloading, overheating, or electrical faults. Use circuit protection devices such as circuit breakers or fuses to interrupt excessive currents and prevent electrical fires. Implement hot work permit and fire prevention measures when performing electrical work in hazardous location or environments containing flammable materials. Provide fire extinguishers, fire blankets, and other firefighting equipment in area where electrical work is conducted. The next hazard associated with electrical work is fall hazard, especially while working at heights or performing electrical installations, repairs, or maintenance tasks can result in fall from ladders, scaffolds, or elevated platform. In order to protect people from fall hazard, use appropriate fall protection equipment, PFAS, personal fall arresting system, such as harness, lanyards, and anchor points when working at height above specified thresholds. Ensure that ladders, scaffolds, and elevated work platforms are inspected, properly secured, and used according to manufacturer instruction and safety regulations. Provide training on safe work practices for working at heights, including ladder safety, fall prevention, and rescue procedures. Finally, another hazard associated with electrical work is chemical hazard. Exposure to chemicals, solvents, or cleaning agents used in electrical maintenance or cleaning activity can cause skin irritation, respiratory problems, or other adverse health effects. As we know that when dealing with chemicals, chemicals can be irritant, pungent, carcinogenic, which can cause cancer, mutagenic, certain chemicals can damage DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. So chemical effect on our body could be irritancy, pungency, carcinogenicity, mutagenicity, asphyxia, toxicity, reprotoxicity, corrosiveness, sensitiveness or sensitivity, then reprotoxicity, sensitivity, teratogenicity. These all are the chemical effect on our body. So exposure to chemical solvents or cleaning agents used in electrical maintenance or cleaning activities can cause skin irritation, respiratory problems, or other adverse health effects. In order to protect people from chemical hazards, people must use appropriate personal protective equipment such as gloves, goggles, or respirators when handling chemicals or solvents. Ensure that work area are well ventilated to minimize exposure to chemical fumes or vapors. Store and handle chemicals according to manufacturer's instruction and follow SDS safety data sheets and provide appropriate training on chemical handling and disposal procedures. By implementing these hazard controls and following established safer practices and procedures, organization can effectively mitigate the risk associated with the electrical work and ensure safety of workers and the workplace.